Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon and our continued coverage of Cloudspire. Today we are going to be going through the PvP kind of tutorial scenario that is part of the second edition rulebook. So these are updates they made to the rulebook as part of the second edition printing. You can get those rulebooks via an upgrade pack from Chip Theory Games, or you can simply go online and find them. So right now I want to cover how to set up the game, and I've gone ahead and done some of the stuff already, simply just to speed up the process a little bit. But essentially, the first thing you are going to do is to choose your factions. Well, in this introductory tutorial scenario, they're essentially holding our hands through the first few steps of the game. So they have told us to go ahead and choose the Brahmin and the Grove Tender faction. With that, you want to make sure that you have the Fortress neoprene mat. You have all the necessary dice. So in this instance, the Brahmin would take these dice, and according to their faction sheet, which you would definitely want to review, looks like this. So along with getting all your chips and stuff, make sure you get a hold of this, and this will tell you that you actually start with this die slotted in to begin with. The rest of these you have to upgrade your fort to get the die. So you would want to give the Grove Tenders those dies for just the purpose of this tutorial. I'm going to keep them off to the side. You'd also want to take a source dial and a health chip for each of your forts. The source dial gets set to 0. The health chip in a standard game gets set to 10. They are double-sided, so you can actually go higher than 10 and higher than 20 on the source dial if it calls for it. Then you're going to obviously want to collect all your chips. So let's take a closer look here at what actually is what your faction is made up of here. So here is the Brahmin faction kind of chip tray setup. I guess technically at the end of the day you could set this up however you choose, but there are slots of specific sizes to put certain things in. So at the very front here, there's a very thin slot that's just going to hold a single chip, and this is where your 3 heroes are going to go. Then the slots in the middle, there's only ever going to be 6 minion options, I believe, for each faction. So these kind of medium-sized trays are for you to put your minions. Normally there's some, most people put like the cheaper minions up front, followed by the more expensive ones in the back. And then way in the back are much larger wells to put your platforms. And the platforms are the only ones that are double-sided to the point where there's actually something different on the backside. So what most people do is take the 2 towers that don't have the star on them and put those all facing out. You can always flip these over as you're looking over them, but for the most part, you usually have to do a fortress advancement before you can even be building the ones with the star on them, the promoted side of the towers. So that's how you kind of want to set up your chips here. Now let's take a look at what is actually on these chips. So this contains all the information that you need in order to control this character. There are lots of keywords in this game, so that's where having your faction specific sheet handy comes in handy, because you can see Osh here, it explains to us Hunter, and then on the back side, once he is promoted, what survival means. So keeping this handy while you're playing is essential to the game. But for the most part, Osh here is telling us a few things. It's telling us how many health chips we're going to place underneath him when he starts out, so 3. He also gets 1 attack and 2 movement. Now, unlike Spires, you're not going to put an attack chip underneath him. You simply know that he attacks for a base of 1. This blue pip here means that he can take 1 upgrade. So anytime he defeats a minion or a spire or a hero, anything, even a landmark, anytime he defeats something, not damages, but defeats something out in the wilds, he's going to get the chance to upgrade, where you can add then a attack chip or a fortification chip, which looks like this. which is essentially a one-time use defense. This symbol here is telling you what type of land he can travel on. So if we look right here, this landmark way here at the bottom is in a forest space. So he can travel on plains spaces like this right here, or this one way up here. He can also obviously travel on the path, and he can travel into the forest spaces. What he can't travel into, what this is telling us, is he can't go into the mountains, and he can't go over water spaces. This is also telling us that it costs 0 command to bring him out. So that's why he's our starting hero. That's the yellow symbol with the fist. And if anybody were to defeat him on this side, they would get 3 source. Obviously, if you flip him over on the back side, he gets an upgraded attack stat of 2. He also gains the keyword survival. You actually would get more source for defeating him, and he can again take a single upgrade. So that's really what is all of these mean. So the starting hero is always going to have 0, and then you have increasing heroes with more difficulty. And for the most part, you're not going to be able to bring in a hero onto their promoted side, which is why there's no CP cost on this side. However, there will be instances where you can bring in minions onto their promoted side. For example, the Aegis here, but their CP cost doesn't change. But you'll notice that there's a CP icon on both sides. For the platforms here, it's some slightly different symbology. So these 2 symbols here are the starting chips that are going to be underneath, and it's also showing you the order that those are going to appear in. So when you place this spire out, you're actually going to place it with these chips underneath it in this order. And that's telling you that this will roll 1 Spire's Fire die when it attacks, and it's got an additional range of 1. All spires automatically attack adjacent to the spire, but an additional range chip means that they can actually fire 2 hexes away. This spire here can take 3 upgrades, simply adding more of these chips, and you always add those chips to the bottom. That makes a difference because when a minion or a hero attacks the spire and does damage to it, they're actually going to remove the chips from the bottom. So thinking about what's on the bottom does make a lot of strategic decisions necessary, mostly also because this is the 3rd type of upgrade a spire can have, and this is a fortification chip, and if it's on the bottom, it actually is going to take 2 hits, a 2 damage attack at minimum, to remove the fortification chip. So it's like a double defense chip. You can see that, for example, the drilling outpost here actually does not have any attack in its basic form. It has the mining, which is going to give you more source, but it simply has fortification, which means it's a little harder to get rid of the drilling outpost on its own. The last things on here is simply the cost in source to build this platform and how much source you would gain for defeating that platform. So that is pretty much it. That's how you read the die. I mean, read the information on your faction specific chips. This is, in my opinion, the best way to set them up and keep them in front of you. And always remember to have and to review before you play this faction specific sheet here. On one side it has all of your chips, and on the other side it's going to explain what all of your fortress upgrades means, and it gives you a little background on that faction specifically. Okay, so actually after you've gotten your specific factions set up, what you're going to do is you're going to find the number 1 tile. Essentially that is your starting tile that's going to start face up here in the middle of the board, and then you're in a standard game, you're going to randomly shuffle up the remaining tiles, choose 6 to be placed around the board like this, and you place them face down. Then in alternating fashion, each of you are going to choose a random tile, you're going to flip it over, and you get to spin it and orient it to your liking. As long as you can connect a path, you're doing good. So you always want to be able to connect a path to this middle piece that started face up. So you can see here, this one technically just dead ends in several locations, but at least it connects to the path. This means that no matter where you go on this map, you can always, once you place your fortress, which comes next, there'll always be a connecting path from one forest to the next, because you're connecting to the middle, and then after you have flipped over each one, you're going to choose a location for your fortress. Alternatively, you could simply just have a stack off to the side. You could create very different looking setups, but as long as, you know, the main thing is there needs to be a path going from one fortress gate to the next. But the next step you would want to do is to place your fortress connected to a neoprene map tile where the three sides of your fortress gate, which is this front hex that sticks out from the rest, that all three sides are covered up. So you could not just like stick it right here dangling off to the side, even though it would be touching a path. It needs to be kind of hugged in there like this and be adjacent to a path. So you could not, say for example, stick it over here because there is no path over here. So this is essentially the setup, or this is the setup that they have advised you to do in the tutorial. So I have positioned all of the map tiles exactly as they say fit. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're actually going to want to take all of your landmark tokens and you're going to pull out all the swamp ones. I'm honestly not sure what the differences are, but I'm assuming the swamp ones are probably less intense than some of the other ones. So you have ruins ones and temple ones, and these are your three styles of landmark tokens. There are other ones, for example, ones with this back, or if you have the portal seekers, ones with this back. You, unless instructed to do so specifically, you leave those in the box. But what you're going to do is you're going to take a swamp token for each faction and place it on the source well closest to their gate. So in this instance, this would be the closest source well, and over here, so you can see that the rulebook has told us to place those specific ones, so I did. But you would place your swamp tokens out in the areas closest to your gate, and then you're going to shuffle up all of the rest and place those out randomly. So some of these have been placed out randomly, others, a very specific thing has been placed out because this is the tutorial scenario. So that's why some of these were face up. But for the most part, you could have a swamp one here in the middle. This could be a ruins tile. It just, you know, in this setup, it is something specific, but it just happens to be, in a normal setup, it could be anything. It just happens to be a temple tile. The rest of the landmarks you can go ahead and put back in the tray and set aside. For the most part, you are not going to need them. Very rarely a landmark is brought back out, so it could happen, but for the most part, you shouldn't need them. Okay, so now essentially we have set up our individual locations. We have set up the board. You also want to make sure you have somewhere handy for everybody to reach all of the Spire attack dice for Spire's fire phase, along with this D6 die in case it needs to be rolled for an event or something like that. You also want to make sure you have stacks of health chips handy for everybody to get their hands on, as well as stacks of Spire upgrade chips. So that's going to be these three colors right here. Again, handy for everybody to get their hands on. If you're playing a multiplayer game, you will also need to have these marker chips here, which are just kind of double-sided with a picture from one of the heroes probably, and these are used to mark the gate that you are going after. So obviously in a two-player game, you each are going after the other's gate, so there's no use to get these out. But in a 3 or 4 player game, you want to have those so you A, remember where you're going, and B, the other people know where you're going. The last few things, and we also need to make sure we have our pegs here somewhere handy for them for when people start advancing their fortress. So you want to have those handy. You also want to go ahead and prepare your market deck. In this example, they have asked us to put out these specifically So we have a mercenary tower, a mercenary or a piece of equipment, and a mercenary hero, and also this particular what is this, earthscaping. You want to have the rest of your earthscapes shuffled up and in a face down pile off to the side because you're going to put a new one out every round. Same thing with your market tiles. You're going to want to shuffle those up and place them off to the side as well for use for drawing later, because every round you're going to chuck all these and refresh this. You also will refresh these after these chips if something is purchased. So in a 2-player game, you're going to have 3 market options out. They could all be equipment, they could all be, you know, mercenary heroes. It's random, but you always take number of players plus 1. So in a 2-player game, you'll see 3 chips out. You also want to go ahead and shuffle up the relic and event decks. They recommend the first time you play, whether it's the tutorial or not, to not include the event deck, so we have not included it. And also, they have told us that they just want us to choose these 6 specific relics. So my relic deck is rather small, but this again is just off to the side. So at this point, we are ready to play. We have set up a game of Cloudspire. So let's go ahead and get back to the rule book here, where they're going to give us a step-by-step walkthrough of how to begin this PvP scenario. Okay, so just a reminder that all of these steps I'm about to take are being taken directly out of the rule book here, as this is kind of a learn to play tutorial scenario. So all of these ideas and gameplay choices, and the reason why I may not roll a die is simply because they're just telling me what the outcome is going to be already. So let's go ahead and get started here. They say here we are not going to use event cards for this first playthrough. You can skip the event phase for this game. Income phase. Since it's wave 1, both players will now increase their source tracker to 5. So let's do that. Tick, 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 tick. And over here. Tick, 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 tick. Okay. Bronin, you are the first player this wave, so you take the first turn. You decide to purchase the Brick and Mortar's Spire for 4 source. Place the chip beside your barracks, decrease your source tracker from 5 to 1, and flip the next chip in the market stack to refill the market. Okay, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to add it here. This gets reduced back to 1. Tick, 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 tick. And we need another market chip. Alright, so another Spire. Slingshot. Okay, Grove Tenders. Now you take your turn. You see a good spot where you can modify the play area, so you spend 2 source on the available Earthscape. Okay, decrease your source tracker to 3 and place the Earthscape beside your barracks. Refill the Earthscape option now. So we'll just put you right there. Tick, tick down. And a new Earthscape is this one. Okay. Build phase. Alright, Bronin. While you could construct your Merc Spire on one of your Fortress Source Wells, you decide not to for now in the hopes you can construct it on a Source Well during the Onslaught phase. Since you don't have enough source to do anything else right now, you pass on your turn. Grove Tenders, however, you have big plans for this phase. You use your first turn during this phase to place your purchased Earthscape in front of your fortress as shown. So, in the book here, they are placing it right, I guess like this, so that this is creating an additional 2 new source wells. Okay. It also increases, let's see, this reduces the number of path hexes adjacent to your fortress gate, which usually helps decrease the amount of opposing minions that can attack your fortress gate at the same time. It also increases the number of source wells near your fortress gate, which allows you to construct more spires close by to defend yourself. When earthscaping, you could also construct a spire on one of the newly revealed source wells, but you do not have enough source at the moment to purchase any of your available spires. Since the Bronin have already passed, it's your turn again. Grove Tender player. This time you purchase the Inner Oak 1 Amplify Fortress advancement, which will help you with your source generation in upcoming waves. This advancement costs 3 source, leaving you with 0. So this goes back to 0, and then they're going to take a little peg here, and the inner oak is right here in the middle. So boom, that goes right there. It is the Grove Tender's turn once again, but this time you pass. Since all players have now passed, the build phase ends. Since this is a 2-player game, the Brahmin must mark the Grove Tender's fortress, and the Grove Tenders must mark the Brahmin's fortress. We talked about that during setup. I'm not going to bother with that. In Wave 1, each faction can select units up to a total cost of 5 CP. The units you should select for this walkthrough are detailed on the following page. Okay, so the Brahmin are going to select Osh, a Dispatch, and a Battleborn, and we're going to group the Dispatch and the Battleborn together. So what that means is, so this is 3 CP, this is 2. I am placing the Dispatch directly over the Battleborn and then giving him his 3 health. Okay, so that means he's basically kind of carrying along the Battleborn. The Battleborn's kind of hiding behind the Dispatch as they march along, and he cannot fight, nor will he be attacked until the Dispatch is defeated. So Osh, same thing, 0 CP. They have decided, is going to be starting on the bottom. So there is our stack. Let's read what it says here. You want the Battleborn to stay and play longer, hopefully taking out some Grove Tender units, so you decide to group your minions, placing the Dispatch on top and the Battleborn on the bottom. Then you stack Osh underneath this minion group. Okay, for the Grove Tenders, they are doing a similar thing. They're going to take Daiwin, who is their 0 cost hero here. He gets 2 health chips. He's going to be on the bottom. And then they have decided to, you want to deal lots of damage right away, taking out landmarks and gaining source. Thus, you don't group your minions. You place the Warbriar on top of your deployment stack, followed by the Treed, and finally Daiwin. So we're going to take a Warbriar for 3. 1, 2, 3. That's 2 CP, so we have 3 left. And the Treed, which is that 3 CP, which gets 4 source. So there you go. And they wanted the Warbriar on top of the Treed. And so these guys are ungrouped, so they'll come out one at a time and start marching along. All right, what's next? Brahmin, start of turn. Campfire mode will only trigger if one player has no units in play, so there's no need to check if it at the beginning of the game, and you do not have any start or turn talents to consider at this time. You could use a limited build option at the start of your turn in order to construct your brick and mortar spires in your fortress, but you decide to hang on to it for better placement in the field. This will allow you to extend your influence later. Alright, so movement. When units deploy, they must do so in order. They are stacked. Your Dispatch and Battleborn are grouped with the Dispatch on top, so they will move and act as the Dispatch until it is defeated. It has 2 movement, and as a minion without terrain allowance, it can only move on the path. Therefore, you have to move it 2 path hexes out of the fortress. So here we go. 1, 2. No further. As it must use its full movement stat when possible. Since Osh is a hero, you would generally get to choose whether or not he moves, but he must move out of the fortress if he can. While he does have a terrain allowance of forest, you decide to move him onto the path so he is not blocked in by the nearby landmarks. Since units generally cannot move through occupied hexes, he cannot move any further this turn. So he could have moved here, but again, he would have to handle these landmarks in order to go anywhere else in the future. So he's moved right here. He cannot move any further because his own men are blocking the way. All right. So, the beginning of the onslaught phase always starts with movement, or any technically start of turn effects, then movement, then Spire's Fire. At this point, if the Grove Tenders had any Spires in play with range that reached a Brahmin unit, those Spires would now attack. However, they do not. There's no Spires on the board right now. So, start of turn, movement, Spire's Fire, exploration. Both Osh and the Dispatch are adjacent to a landmark, so you can explore it. Pick up the chip and look at it secretly so your opponent can't see it. It turns out this landmark is hiding a Sabisa, a landmark minion with toxic secretion. The details of how this talent works can be found on the Landmark and Market Talents reference sheet. Toxic secretion would damage your units as they move into hexes adjacent to the Sabisa, so you turn it back face down and wait to reveal it until next turn once your units are better positioned. So what you would do is you would pick this up, you get the option to peek at it. It does not have any keywords that say it must be flipped over. So you actually just then flip it back over and decide, that's a decent thing to be protecting your gate. At this point then we would move on to the attack step, but there is no one for us to attack, but they just cover that in general. The dispatch has the talent 2 range. The Bronnan's reference sheet outlines what each talents do. 2 range allows the dispatch to attack and retaliate from up to 2 hexes away. So they point out in the book that all the way out to here is everywhere he can reach. So 1, 1, 2. Count those 2 hexes away. There are no opposing units or fortresses within 2 hexes, so we can't make any attacks. All right, so at this point, Brannon have taken their turn. We move over to the Grove Tenders. Start of turn, we don't have enough source to take a limited build option, so you move straight forward to your movement portion of your turn. Going forward, we will skip over start of turn unless there is something happening in it. Movement. The Warbriar is at the top of your deployment stack. It moves 2 hexes the only way it can along the path. So here we go. 1, 2. Okay. While the Treed also has 2 movement, it has no way to use its full movement, so it stops behind the Warbriar. All right, so it's going to go 1 and stop. Daiwen deploys last. She has the forest terrain allowance, so you can just use just 1 movement to place her into the forest hex. Since she has 2 range, this is a good spot for her, as both of the landmarks that you can explore this turn are within her range, should she want to attack them. Okay, so she can plop herself right here. All right. Spires fire. The Brahmin have no spires in play, so nothing happens. Exploration. Your units are adjacent to 2 landmarks, so you can explore both of them one at a time. The swamp landmark is the bounty hunter, and you want its source reward, so you reveal it. Okay, so we would peek at this. We say, ooh, bounty hunter. I actually do want to attempt to fight this thing because it actually has no attack stat. So it goes right there. So you reveal it, adding 4 health chips underneath it when you do so. The Ruins landmark turns out to be a Grail Viper. You should be able to take care of that this turn, so reveal it as well and place 3 health chips underneath it. So here is the Grail Viper, and it gets 3 health chips. Okay. Attack. Daiwen has the talent 2 range. The Grove Tenders reference sheet outlines what each... so we already talked about range. I'm not going to repeat all this for you. This means that all 3 of your units could attack either of the landmark minions you revealed. Since the Warbriar and Treed are adjacent to both, and Daiwen is with 2 hexes of them, your minions have to make an attack, while Daiwen's attack is optional. You get to decide the order of your attacks, so you make the Treed attack the Grail Viper first, dealing 1 damage and removing a chip from underneath it. So the Treed attacks here. This takes this away, and it does not have an attack stat, so I guess it just doesn't attack back. There's no retaliation. Units usually retaliate with damage equal to their attack stat, but the Grail Viper has Relentless, which makes it roll a Spire attack die to determine how much damage its retaliation deals. Okay, there you go. It will stop rolling when it rolls either a blank or a 2, and for the purpose of this example, we'll decide that it rolls a 1, another 1, and then a 2. In total, it would deal 4 damage to the Treed, but the Treed has Tough, which reduces the retaliation's damage to 2. Boy, don't really want to mess with these, do you? My chips are sticking together. All right, so the Treed is reduced by 2. Then your Warbriar also attacks the Grail Viper, dealing 1 damage. Okay, boom, that goes away. Since the Viper has already retaliated once this turn, it doesn't deal any damage to the Warbriar. All right, that's good to note. Daiwen has the talent 2 range, allowing her to attack and retaliate from 2 hexes away, as outlined on the Grove Tenders reference sheet. This means she can deal her 1 damage to the Grail Viper, which defeats it. Okay, boom. You are gone. Discard the Grail Viper and get the reward shown on the defeated chip, which in this case is a relic card. Okay, so that's what that symbol means instead of a source symbol. Because you wisely decide to have your hero attack last to make the defeat, Daiwen may now level up. She has an upgrade capacity of 1 and no current upgrades, so you can give her an upgrade. You decide to give her an attack upgrade. Okay, so we're going to take this chip here and stick it directly underneath her. So now she attacks for 2 at a range of 2. Okay, and these guys get a relic card. The onslaught phase continues with each player taking turns until there are no faction minions in play. Alright, so it's going to continue giving us step-by-step instructions here. I'm going to try and paraphrase as best I can to speed this along. Alright, so the Brahmin are going to gain movement, so the dispatch is going to move its 2, 1, 2, and they're going to have Osh follow along 1, 2 as well. No spires to fire, and then let's see. You explore the temple landmark. It's a gate port, and you choose not to reveal it in order to withhold the knowledge of its location from your opponent. So we would flip this over, we would take a peek at it, and we'd say, ooh, a rift walk, I'm going to hide that there. Since Osh is still adjacent to the swamp landmark, you can explore it again, this time choosing to reveal the Sabisa. So it needs to gain 4 health chips. So here we go. You use Osh to attack the Sabisa, dealing 2 damage instead of 1 because Osh has Hunter. Hunter gives him +1 attack stat to landmarks, so there he attacks. The Sabisa does not have an attack stat or a talent that gives it retaliation, so it does not retaliate. Since the dispatch has 2 range, it also attacks the Sabisa for 1 damage, leaving it with 1 health left. Perfect. Alright, so back to the Grove Tenders. The Grove Tenders are going to move their Warbriar along the path, 1, 2. The Treed also is going to follow 1, 2 along the path. And this time they gonna have Daiwen move 2 hexes along the path, positioning her adjacent to the Bounty Hunter. So there we go. Spires fire, there's no spires. Exploration, you explore the swamp landmark. Your units are now adjacent to. It's a source peddler, and you choose to reveal him. So again, we could flip this over. We could just take a peek at him, but we decide we want to keep him face up. We want the source because it's 6 total source if we can defeat him. And so let's see what happens. First, you make Daiwen attack the source peddler, dealing it 2 damage. The source peddler cannot retaliate against Daiwen because it is not adjacent, and the source peddler does not have range. So Daiwen now, with the attack upgrade, is attacking for 2. So 2 come off the source peddler, and it can't do anything about it. Your Warbriar also attacks the source peddler, dealing 1 damage. Since this is the first attack against the source peddler this turn that it can retaliate against, it does so. So source peddler takes a hit, and Warbriar takes 2 back. Alright, so those come off. Finally, your Treed attacks the source peddler as well, dealing 1 damage with no retaliation, since the peddler has now used its retaliation for the turn. Alright, so this leaves the peddler with just 1 health remaining. Okay, so attack happened. We are back to the Brahmin now. First, move the dispatch. It has a possible 2 hexes it could move, to both of which use its full movement of 2 and makes progress towards the Grove Tender Fortress Gate. You want to explore the hex in the center landmark, so you choose to move onto the hex adjacent to the landmark. Alright, so we could go 1, 2, or we could go 1, 2. We are choosing to go right here. And you leave Osh where he is so he can finish off the Sabisa. Okay, so as long as we don't move, the Sabisa, the toxic secretion, does not come into play. Alright, so we will explore the landmark here, and it is a Traxxer Roughneck. Because it has foreboding, you have no choice but to reveal it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can't always just flip them back over. Alright. Alright, so let's start with attack now. You make Osh attack the Sabesa, dealing 2 damage. Since the Besa only has 1 health remaining, it is defeated. Defeated units cannot retaliate. Collect the reward of 4 source. So this is defeated. We get to uptick to back to 5. These chips are not easy to turn when they're in here like this. I'm just going to say that now. Okay, the dispatch has to attack the Traxxer Roughneck, dealing 1 damage and taking 2 damage back in retaliation. The dispatch is left with 1 health remaining while the Traxxer has 4. So it does 1, the Traxxer does 2, and there we go. Okay, so back to the Grove Tenders now. The Warbriar has a number of movement options which would use its full movement and result in progress towards its mark, the Bronnan's Fortress Gate. You decide to make the most progress possible around the bottom of the Traxxer Roughneck. So again, it could go 1, 2, 3 even. Yeah, because it's right here. Oh no, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, but it's having us put him right here. I believe Impale is going to come into play. Since the Warbriar finishes its movement adjacent to an opposing unit it was not previously adjacent to, it uses Impale to deal 1 damage to the Roughneck, leaving it with 3 health. This is not an attack, so the Roughneck does not retaliate. The Treed also has a couple of movement options, and you move it adjacent to the Source Peddler. So it has to move 2, but it can go 1, 2, because we are closer to the gate than when we started. Finally, you move Daiwen 2 hexes along the path to have the Roughneck within her range. So she can go 1, 2, and can now fire on the Roughneck. Spire's fire, there's nothing to explore, and so we move on to attack. The Warbriar and Daiwen have to attack the Roughneck due to its Engage talent. Since it only has 3 health left, you can manipulate attack order to avoid retaliation, though in doing so, you will also give up the opportunity to make a defeat with Daiwen and level her up. You attack with Daiwen first, dealing 2 damage. Boom. Boom. So it doesn't have range, so it cannot retaliate. And so then we leave the Warbriar up to finish this thing off, and since it is now defeated, it cannot retaliate on the Warbriar. And we're going to get, yes. Roughneck rewards you the ability to construct a spire on its source at no cost. Okay, so this symbol is different from the other one. I don't know if you guys can see that really well, but that was news to me. Right now you have 2 spires available to you, the Shrubbery and the Retall. You choose to construct the Shrubbery because it starts with a fortification upgrade, meaning that attacking units will have to deal 2 damage to it to remove an upgrade. It will therefore be safe from attack from the Dispatch and the Battleborn grouped underneath, since both only deal 1 damage. You decide to construct the Shrubbery with the attack upgrade on top and the fortification on the bottom. Okay, so you do get to put these in whatever order you choose. That's news to me too. So you could put them like this, but you have to have the yellow chip on the bottom for it to be protected. And so that's what they're saying. That makes the most sense. So there is the Spire. I do not have the miniatures upgrade. I'm actually working on a little DIY project from someone, a Board Game Geek user, who posted a brilliant idea of using kind of pizza box savers. So we're going to look into that, and when I do get them in and check them out, I will post a video of that. But for right now, I just have them sitting on the mat. Alright, it will therefore be safe from the attacks, blah blah blah. Your Treed now attacks the Source Peddler, and its 1 damage is enough to defeat it. So the Treed attacks here. This guy is now defeated, and he gives up 6 Source. So there's that. Okay, that was a big turn for the Grove Tenders. All right, start of turn. When you defeated the Sabesa last turn, you opened up a source well within your influence. So why did Osh not Okay, I missed this. I should have leveled up Osh with a attack step. I completely skipped over this, but we remembered it, so there you go. All right, so back to Osh for getting his upgrade. Okay, when you defeated the Sabesa last turn, you opened up a source well within your influence. Taking advantage of this opportunity, you use a limited build option to construct your brick and mortar spire on that source well with the upgrades ordered as attack, range, attack. Okay, so here is our brick and mortar, and it gets to attack in one range. And remember, we can put these in the order we choose because when it's attacked, the bottom chip is going to be taken off first. So this way we'll keep our range even after being attacked once. Put a peg in one of the holes at the bottom of your fortress to remind you that you have completed one of your 2 limited build options. So plop, that goes there. Since Osh has Hunter, you move him 2 hexes to be adjacent to the closest unknown landmark, hoping it will be something he can defeat with ease. So it actually wants us to go boom, boom. He's staying out of the way of everybody. The dispatch has a couple of movement options, but neither of them will allow it to move out of the shrubbery's range, which is just adjacent, but he has to stay along the path. So you move it 2 hexes, making the most progress possible and giving it attack options should it survive the shrubbery's attack. So it actually is almost showing that this is a viable option. 1, 2. So I could have moved up here and then over there. Since the dispatch is within range of the Grove Tender shrubbery, it fires. So the first time we actually have a Spire's Fire event. It has 1 attack upgrade, so it rolls 1 Spire attack die, and for the purpose of this walkthrough, we'll say it rolled 2 damage. Wah, wah. The dispatch had only 1 health remaining, so it is defeated and returned to your barracks. So this comes off. Dispatch goes back, and now the Battleborn is all of a sudden out in the open, and we have to give him his full health of 3. Note the extra damage from the Spire's attack on the dispatch does not get applied to the Battleborn grouped underneath. The Grove Tenders collect the source reward of 3 for defeating the dispatch, which brings them up to 9 total. Alright, you explore the ruins landmark that Osh is adjacent to. It's a Traxxer Hellion. Oh no, not this one. This one. Okay. Since it has foreboding, it must be revealed and given its health, which is 6. 6. That's a very beefy fellow right here. There we go. Alright, Osh must attack the Hellion because it has Engage. He deals it 3 damage due to his attack upgrade and Hunter keyword. The Hellion deals 1 damage back to Osh as retaliation, leaving him with 2 health left. So 1, 2, 3, and 1 back. Okay. Now, even though the Battleborn was just revealed, he still takes part in the attack step. So he must attack if it can, so it attacks the shrubbery it is adjacent to. Since the Spire has Fortification upgrade, however, on the bottom, it does not lose any upgrades from this attack. So the Battleborn has only a attack stat of 1. The yellow chip, the Fortification chip being on the bottom, blocks that, essentially. So the attack was wasted. He still attempted. Moves on to the Grove Tenders step. So Grove Tenders. Since you now have some source, you choose to use a limited build option to construct a retall on the water source well near your fortress. So this right here. To help protect it from opposing units. You have influence over this hex since it is a hex group adjacent to your fortress. You construct the retall with the attack as the top upgrade and the range on the bottom. So we will take a retall here. It gets a orange and a green. And it wants us to put the green on the bottom. So here we go. And there is our newest spire. This costs you 5 source, which is marked here. So we go from 9 down to 4. Okay. All right. So we took a limited build option. So we need to take, it did not tell us to do so, but we need to take one of these and plop it down here on the bottom to keep track that we did that. Now we are on to movement. The Warbriar does not have any other movement options, so it moves 2 path hexes closer to the Bronn Fortress gate. So this would be moving it backwards. So and I guess this, you would know that this isn't going to make it. So 1, 2, here we go. The Treed has a few movement options, and you choose to make the most progress possible to ensure the Battleborn is not able to attack it next turn. Daiwen stays where she is, ensuring she's able to attack the Battleborn this turn. So Daiwen's going to attack here. The Treed is simply going 1, 2, and getting the heck out of dodge. All right, Spire's Fire. We don't have any in range. There's nothing to explore. So attack. The minions have nothing to attack, but Daiwen zeroes in on the Battleborn, dealing it 2 damage. Oofta. All right. It is reduced to 1 health and cannot retaliate because it does not have range. Okay. On to the Bronn. Now it's your turn to be the aggressor. First, you move Osh 2 hexes on the path to be adjacent to the Warbriar. Okay, so I guess we're leaving the Traxxer Hellion where he is. And so we're going boom, boom to cut off the Warbriar. The Battleborn has only 1 movement option, which is adjacent to Daiwen, but out of range of the Grove Tender Spires. Okay, so it would go boom, boom. It doesn't have to stop here. It can move here, and it is technically closer than it was right here, and it's now out of range of the shrubbery. Okay, so Spire's Fire, nothing happens. There's nothing to explore. Let's move on to attack. First, Osh attacks the Warbriar, defeating it for the 1 source reward. Only 1? Man. Giving you 6 total source. All right. So he does his 2 damage. This is now defeated. So we get 1 source for this. Boom. Warbriar goes back here. And Osh may level up from the defeat. So you may flip him to his promoted side, but he loses his current upgrade. So he's going to lose this. He flips this back over. Okay, I thought he would get his health back, but maybe he doesn't. So that's interesting. The Battleborn must attack Daiwen. It deals 1 damage, but then is defeated from Daiwen's 2 damage dealt in retaliation. Alright, so 1 damage to Daiwen, but Daiwen gets him right back. So he's actually going to get 2 source for that. And they should have a total of 6. Yep. Daiwen may level up from the defeat. She is at her upgrade capacity on her basic side, so your opponent flips her to her promoted side and removes her upgrade. Okay, so she flips. Goes right there. Okay. Since her health stat is higher on her promoted side than it was on her basic side, she also gains a health chip, bringing her back up to 2 health. Oh, okay. So you only gain the difference. That's what it is. And Osh was 3 over here, and he's 3 on this side. I see now. Okay. All right. So we are back to the Grove Tender's turn. That was the Bronnan's turn, which ended in epic defeat. The Treed only has 1 option for movement, putting it adjacent to Osh. So it goes right here. Boom. Technically, I guess it could go up here. Boom. But it really doesn't make any difference. You move Daiwen 2 hexes back toward your fortress onto the Plains hex. Okay, so it retreats to here because it's a hero, putting the Bounty Hunter in range. Okay. Spire's Fire, nothing. Exploration, nothing. Attack. Daiwen decides to attack first, knowing that the Treed's attack is going to end the wave because it is going to result in the last faction minion's defeat. Daiwen deals 1 damage to the Bounty Hunter. So she has a range of 2, but she lost her attack upgrade. So there we go. Then the Treed attacks Osh, dealing 1 damage. Boom. Osh retaliates for 2, defeating the Treed, earning the Bronnan 2 source and providing Osh with a level up option. So let's give him his 2 source. He's up to 8 now. And they are suggesting that he gain an attack upgrade. So there we go. And the tree disappears. Okay. This ends the wave. Since neither of you have any minions left in play, the Bronnin end the wave with 8 source and the Grove Tenders with 6 source and a relic card. Let's just take a peek at what that relic card was. Wavelength Jammer. Prior to players taking their turns during the market phase, you may gain a single market option for free. This does not count as your market purchase. That's a handy little card. Okay, so both remain at near the Fortress Gate took damage, so they both remain at 10 health. In preparation for moving into the next wave, both of you should remove the limited build option pegs from the bottom of your fortress. Done. Pass the first player marker to the Grove Tender player. There are no cards to discard in this way. I don't even know what the first player token is. I didn't even know there was one. Okay. Now that you understand how a wave of Cloudspire flows, continue to wave 2 and the rest of the game on your own. So that is where we are going to stop here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really kind of curious as to what the first player marker is because I don't see it listed in the components section. Either way, that is the tutorial scenario for a PvP game. So ideally, you would sit down with you know, a loved one or a friend, whoever you plan on playing with, and you guys would go through these step by step, and then each one of you would take off with your own factions. I feel like the Grove Tenders are in a slightly better spot here, but who knows? Either way, we are going to stop the video here, and since this is a PvP scenario, I'm not going to continue it. It's a little too tricky for my taste, but there will be some more Cloudspire videos in the future. So please keep an eye out for those. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you would like to be notified when those specific videos drop on YouTube. Once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.